Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. What was the scariest non-paranormal thing to ever happen to you? Okay, so here's a quick story, even though I'm already too late in this thread for it to matter. When I was in my sophomore year of high school, I used to sleep over at my buddy's house all the time. In his room was one of those glass squares in the ceiling, I'm blanking out on what they're called, which is essentially a sunroof for a house. For some reason, his sunroof was fairly opaque and foggy, so you couldn't really see through it. About 2 hours in, I look up at the sunroof, and what I saw I'll never be able to forget. It was a little man. Just a tiny man, in a plain white t-shirt. A full-grown man, with regular body proportions, and a regular-looking face scaled down to about half a foot, army crawling atop the sunroof. I didn't know what to do or say. I was just looking at this Toy Story-esque tiny little unexplainable man crawling on top of the ceiling, and he did it so fluently, just human-like. It was the only point in my life I remember being truly in a state of shock, literally crawling back and forth around the corners of his bed on his elbows and knees for no effing reason at like 3 in the morning. I check for the little man again, and he's doing the same. I check my friend again, still crawling. The sunroof was reflecting my effing idiot friend being a effing idiot at 3 in the effing idiot morning. I don't think I'll ever experience that feeling again. Such confusion and fear and curiosity and everything all at once. I didn't have an idea what was happening. Anyway, all my friends call that the little man story, and it's become a bit of an urban legend in my little group. I've told this story before, I think, but this is the right place for it. When I was a kid, we'd go to these beach cabins in Maryland, right by the Chesapeake. They were small, rustic ordeals with basic comforts, nothing fancy like TVs or air conditioning. 2 bedrooms and a cot in the kitchen, and my siblings and I rotated on the cot so that no one got too sore from it. A small tradition was that my mom and I would have a hot cup of tea before bed, in our summer jammies, and just our way of relaxing while everyone else went off to read or listen to music. Well, one night I was settling onto the cot when she picked up the tea kettle to fill it. Then she jumped back and started screaming for my father. Somehow he knew SHT was getting real, ran from the back bedroom and barely paused to see my mom point towards the left side of the house. He burst out the door and towards the left of the cabin. I still remember the smell of the old wood and the feel of my teddy bear shielding me from whatever the hell was happening. I remember seeing my 14-year-old brother, then a medium-ranking karate student, following my dad out of the cabin at full speed. My father, a former Army sergeant and MP with a Bronze Star, managed to tackle the guy that had been peeping into our kitchen window. While my mom called 911, I remember hearing the guy talking. He was saying things like the Ouija board effing told me. I want the devil to suck my effing brains out. Satan is in cabin 10, I have to get to cabin 10, the devil wants me to kill myself. And so on. My dad kept a grip on him for probably a good 15 minutes until the cops showed up. The first thing out of the one's mouth was, "Jamie, when they let you out." He'd been released from jail just 2 weeks earlier, for arson. You know where he was standing, when my mom was at the sink in the kitchen. Right beside the propane tank. Fucking flying cockroach flew right at my face. Flipped a boat once. Went underwater. Instant panic. Shit's effed up. You're underneath the boat. This is bad. You're gonna drown. No, you're not. Stop. Stay calm. Find which way is up. Look at the bubbles. Go up. Surface. Breathe. Hold onto the upside down boat. Check for your friends. Everybody's okay. I think we just lost the engine. Here comes help. Man, we're kind of embarrassed. We're alive. Flipped a boat though. So when I was little, about 9 or 10, my brother and his friends plus me went to a restaurant. We all decided to play tag outside the restaurant. This was after dinner, so it was sorta dark outside. I was running laps around the restaurant. There was this car parked in front of the restaurant with a guy sitting inside it, about mid-30s I guess. I didn't think much of it and kept running. I run another lap and he's getting out of the car. Another one and he's right in front of me. I turn to get out of the way, but he jumps in front of me and yells, "Gotcha." He misses and I run away from him, laughing. I go inside and go to the bathroom. But when I come out, he's not there anymore. I never knew where he went. I grew up in a little village in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields. I would often walk my huge wolfhound pretty late at night, that way I avoided the dog owners who were scared of my pup. So one evening I was walking up the hill to the church with my friend and my dog. Going around the corner towards the top of the hill, I shone the light ahead to see if there were any foxes or such. The light reflected off of the van, which was completely invisible before. It was half in the bushes and with no lights on. We paused for a second, turning the torch off. We panicked and started to run down the hill, unable to get to the fields on either side by the hedges. The van started to play music, typical chart stuff, really loud, driving directly towards us, getting faster. We ducked into a hedge, lay on the floor, and waited. Wolfhounds are incredibly sweet and I've never seen him act that way before, or since. We waited an hour in the mud. I called my dad to come meet us, and he heard the van driving past us again and again, just going around in circles. I have never been so relieved to have my dog, and my dad walk me home. Came home around 11 p.m. after hanging out with my friends. I was halfway through changing into my PJs when I heard a light tapping noise on my window pane. My house is one story and my room has one big window facing into the street. All of a sudden I hear some man yelling incoherently outside my house and my dad chiming in a few minutes later. My dad came out to yell at this creepy a-hole, but he ran off and got away. The cops eventually came and chilled outside my house for a while to reassure me. I bought some thick-ass curtains to cover my window, but I still feel like someone's watching me. An F4 tornado. We were trying to make it home when the sirens started and the wind and rain got more intense than anything I'd seen before or since. We pulled over to a grocery store and they took us into a meat locker in the back. When we came back out it was sunny, every big tree was down and there was debris everywhere. I couldn't even tell where I was without looking at street signs. A few houses down the street from us. When I was 16, my parents left me in charge of babysitting my little brother while they went out for a date night. This was during the dead of winter and a nasty snowstorm started to kick up around 8 or 9 p.m. that night. By that time, they still hadn't made it back and I was starting to get pretty tired myself. Both my brother and I went upstairs and prepared ourselves for bed. My brother's bedroom was located directly above our garage and it had a row of windows that looked out over the street. It was pretty hard to see it through the storm, but I was able to make out the figures of two people sitting in the front of the van. While they kept trying to accelerate through several inches of snow, I wondered whether or not I should go outside to try and help them. Through the driver's side window, I could see these long strands of dark hair thrashing around violently in what appeared to be a struggle between the two people inside. He's holding a big shovel, but instead of walking over to clear the snow from his tires, he starts walking away from his van to the other end of our cul-de-sac. I tried my best to keep eyes on him, but eventually he walked too far away and was no longer in my line of sight. He took his shovel and quickly dug a path for his front wheel, and what happened next gives me chills to this day. He turned around and was staring directly at me. All of the lights in the bedroom were out, so I thought there was no way he could see me from outside. But somehow, he did. That was the last I ever saw of him. One night as I was driving home from work, I ended up at a stoplight on a fairly deserted street. While I was sitting at the light I saw a man walking slowly down the road towards my car. I became very nervous when I realized he was staring at me and started running towards my car. When I looked back, the man was standing right next to my car and violently tried to open my passenger side door several times. Luckily, the light turned green in that second and I sped off. The dead look he had in his eyes still freaks me out. Dad decided to run the tracks and beat the train. We won, but not by much. Choo-choo. When I was in 6th grade, so probably about 10 or 11, I went to play an indoor soccer game. I was playing in a league against 14 or 15-year-old kids, so they were considerably larger than me. Anyway, we were playing the game, nothing out of the ordinary, when the next thing I know, I am waking up on the floor surrounded by EMTs and parents. I was freezing cold, and I could not feel my legs. Everyone was standing around me, crying and in shock, and I was very confused. What had happened was that, this kid who was playing goalie ran all the way up to the halfway line, where I had received a pass. He proceeded to pick me up, and powerbomb me onto the floor, which was essentially concrete with a layer of carpet over it. Apparently the guy just stood over me, laughing like a maniac. I think he might have been a little unhinged, because as far as I can remember, our team hadn't done anything to warrant such an action. I was out cold for about 2 minutes, and woke up in the cold/paralyzed/confused state. I think I was in shock. An ambulance took me to the hospital, Had me stripped down and prepared for a CAT scan, and all I could think is, damn it, why did I have to wear teal-colored briefs today? They did the scan and thankfully found no brain damage. It did kind of change the way I played soccer though, leading to an overcautious approach which led to people thinking I was a bit of a PC cat in terms of style of play. Skeptical. Also, sometimes when I am walking around, I get this intangible fear that someone is going to attack me from behind or that people will just attack me for no reason whatsoever. I guess it's just heightened alertness now. This was 17 years ago, give or take, and my family and I went camping at a national forest not far from us. It was a campsite area with other people also camping but far enough apart to have a bit of seclusion. We did this once a year or so and would stay for 4 days and 3 nights. This was against the park rules, no access to the top after nightfall, but we went anyway. I remember, clear as day, when we reached the top. The headlights of our van panned from left to right as we turned into the parking area at the lookout. We see a beat-up old pickup truck, rusted, and overall kind of creepy looking. He quickly turned to face us and I remember seeing his eyes reflect off the headlights. They were the scariest eyes I have ever seen. My dad whipped the van around and drove back down the mountain as fast as he could while still being safe. My parents stayed awake the whole night and they said they saw the truck drive past our campsite multiple times but never stopped. In the morning, we packed up everything and went home. That was the last time we went camping. I drove my car off a cliff with my then girlfriend inside. I was young and grossly overestimated my ability to drive. It was wet and I had a RWD car. It was a mountain road and there was no cell reception. I always thought a near-death accident would feel like a dream. Like I would see my life pass before my eyes. Instead I was hyper-aware of what was going on around me, which made it all the more sickening. I once woke up and found a man standing beside my bed looking down at me. He was, thankfully, a burglar who ran when he realized I'd woken up enough to register that something was wrong and not a rapist or violent. That was 11 years ago and I still can't easily sleep if I'm home alone. Me having to pull my gun on a SHD head that thought it would be nice to pull a knife on me at the ATM. No, I didn't shot him. He dropped the knife SHT his pants, literally, and ran. It ain't like the movies, folks. There have been a few things that have scared me that were not paranormal, but by far one of the scariest was when some of my friends went to a local school at night, and of course it was creepy as FCK, but we noticed in the backfield, someone seemed to be crouching down. The guy stared at us for a full minute before charging towards us at breakneck speed. We all sprinted out of there as fast as f***ing possible. I went to the beach with a group of friends one Sunday and then decided to go take a quick smoking break at a small shack a few meters away from the group. Whilst there, a man, who seemed nice enough, struck up a conversation. He served about 5 years, and was back on the streets. Scariest thing about it is he was comfortable with revealing this to a complete stranger. And he wasn't even bragging or anything, just stating matter-of-factly. Donald Trump won the Republican nomination and is now tied with Clinton nationally. Scary shit. Having to evacuate a plane, on the runway, because of a fuel leak. I had a seat near the wing, and from my window I could clearly see the jet fuel gushing out onto the runway. The mad scramble of people to get themselves and their stuff out of the plane was worse than the leak itself. A home intruder lurking in the darkness while I was walking around naked. Only to find out that there was an actual home intruder. There was this one thread where Op disappeared after posting it. Too spooky for me. I left an abusive relationship last year. He didn't take it too well, and started calling me incessantly. The worst was when he called over 30 times in one day. There were a few really scary ones that day. One of those, I was at my sorority house when he called me, drunk and crying. The next unnerving call was definitely the scariest. I was in the Modern Languages building when I got another phone call, so I took it outside and walked around campus for a while. During that 90-minute conversation, he told me he had a gun to his head, and I needed to come over to take them from him. I pleaded with him to please just meet me in a public place, told him my car was broken down and I was on the other side of town and couldn't walk to him. During this fiasco, I ran into my friend's husband. Friend is a social worker, her husband is retired Air Force. Once I was off the phone, FH, and I called the VA's suicide hotline and reported my ex. Ex is an infantryman in the National Guard. They handled him from there, and my friend's husband took me over to his friend's house. The Title IX coordinator is terrible. The victim's advocate, though, is amazing. She would give me hugs, took me to safe house, helped set up counseling appointments, and even helped me get my restraining order. Had a heart attack last year. I'm 43, so it wasn't something that was on my radar. Started off feeling like heartburn that wouldn't go away. I decided to go to bed. Bad call. Lots of people die that way. My wife came in, took one look at me and called 911. The scariest part was the ambulance ride. I was in so much pain and couldn't catch my breath at all. Didn't think I was going to make it. Ended up having a 100% blockage of my right coronary artery. Seeing someone overdose on heroin, while being a user myself. I had come close before, but this was a true turn blue overdose. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.